On this fine November morning. I hope you are all having a great day so far. Welcome to What's in Your Pond, the third of 3 virtual webinars presented by the Maryland Department of the Environment, Sediment, Stormwater, and Dam Safety Program. My name is Jennifer Smith. I am the manager of the Sediment, Stormwater, and Dam Safety Program. And for those of you who don't know about us, we are a program, one of 8 programs in the Water and Science Administration of MDE, and we are responsible for developing statewide regulations and design criteria for dams and small ponds, and for stormwater management and erosion and sediment control. We also issue approvals and permits for dam construction and in some cases, small ponds. We also have oversight authority for local stormwater and erosion and sediment control programs. So it is great to have so many stormwater and dam safety professionals here today with us. We hope this workshop provides you an opportunity to reestablish contact with us and each other. And we hope by the end of these sessions, we as an industry will be interpreting design, construction, and regulatory requirements the same way. As you probably know, we originally planned to do these workshops as face-to-face meetings where we could have a lot of interaction with each other. But unfortunately, with COVID-19, we had to change our plans and do these virtually. So this will make interaction difficult, but to the extent that it is possible, we want these sessions to be as interactive as possible. So please feel free to include comments, thoughts, and questions in the chat function. Okay, so now I have some important housekeeping items to go over. We have approximately 160 people registered for today. Looks like we have 124 currently participating. So it is important that everyone please remain muted. Please locate and open the chat function on the toolbar at this time. We will be taking a roll call using a link which is now in the chat function. Please click on that link now and enter your information. If you get bumped, lose connectivity, or your screen freezes, leave and re-enter the session. The College of Southern Maryland is providing CEUs and PDHs for all 3 sessions. A link to your certificate will be available at the end of each session. You have to be both registered and here for the entire program to get the CEUs for today. A link will be placed in the chat during the last 5 minutes of today's session, and we will keep it open for 15 minutes past the end of the program. This link will take you to an evaluation of the session, and once completed, you will receive an email with your certificate. Just a reminder, certificates will not be available after today's session. I would like to recognize the College of Southern Maryland Center for Environmental Training and Karen Brandt and Tara Jones and their staff for their support in helping us with these virtual workshops. And I'd also like to recognize the EPA's Chesapeake Bay Regulatory and Accountability Program, who provided funding so that these workshops could be provided to you at no cost. So in the last 2 sessions, we talked about the legal and regulatory authority over dams and small ponds in Maryland. We talked about procedures and MOUs, defining a dam, including culverts. We talked about pond maintenance and retrofits and hazard creep, among other things. Today, I'm going to start with a brief discussion on plan approvals and coordination amongst plan review agencies. Then we will continue to discuss hot issues with design, then transition to construction inspection hot topics and maintenance inspection. Finally, we will wrap up with a discussion on the next steps to continuing this very important collaborative effort. Your speakers today will be John Roche, who is the chief of the Dam Safety Permits Division, Charlie Wallace, a senior engineer from the Dam Safety Permits Division, Pat Depkin, environmental compliance specialist with the Program Review Division, and Ray Barr, our deputy program manager with the Sediment, Stormwater, and Dam Safety Program. Also, let me recognize our moderators for today. We have Michelle Crawford, Brian Cooper, and Shamir Eaton. And our break recall music is provided courtesy of Brian Cooper. So we have scheduled 20 to 40 minutes for each session, including time for questions and comments. There will be a 5-minute break between sessions. Questions should be placed in the chat, and our moderators will read them to the presenters. We will also be creating a frequently asked questions document, which will be emailed to each registered attendee. So we titled this session, "What You See is What You Get." What you see is what you get is a computer programming term that means there is nothing hidden. What you are looking at is the real thing. So here's a fun fact. Did you know that the world's first What You See Is What You Get document preparation program, Bravo, became operational in 1974, and that Microsoft hired the creator of Bravo to develop the first Microsoft multi-tool Word software program, which was the first version of Microsoft Word. The actual Microsoft Word was first launched in 1983. Microsoft employees had fun creating code names for the early versions of Microsoft Word, including Build-A-Cat and Spaceman Spiff. Okay, so now you're probably thinking, what does this have to do with small ponds? Well, like I said, what you see is what you get means what you are looking at is the real thing. In other words, for us in a small pond field, you get what you plan for. So how can we get the small pond that we've approved? And how can we approve what we want to get? The focus of today's session is how can we ensure the pond we think we are approving is the same pond that is constructed and is the same pond 10 to 20 years later? How do we ensure the resiliency of our infrastructure? And why is this important? Well, it's important because we are owners. We represent the public. We have a responsibility to ensure public safety, and we have a responsibility to ensure the infrastructure that we own and maintain is in good working condition. So we've talked about hazard creep and the need to design for full build-out conditions, and we've talked about not having trees on the embankment and the need for adequate access for maintenance and mowing. We've talked about spillway pipe replacement and adequate slopes. We've talked about identifying a dam and those difficult situations, such as with roads and railroad culverts, where it is not obvious that a dam actually exists. We've also talked about approval authorities for small ponds and use 3 watersheds. All of these issues are important to consider when you are reviewing a plan for a small pond. What we did not talk about are some of the other land development reviews that may be happening parallel with the small pond review that can have a significant impact on these issues. For example, the subdivision plats and the site plans, and in some cases, even the building permits. These can all result in approvals that negatively impact a small pond or dam. The preliminary plan or the record plat, for example, will determine dam ownership and the location of forest conservation easements. Site plans may show improvements on the dam, such as gazebos or piers, that may require the small pond approval from the small pond approving agency. It is therefore very important that we communicate amongst ourselves and with our sister land development review agencies. So consider, how is your plan approval permit agency structured? And does your agency structure allow for coordination across disciplines? How do you interact with other planning and permitting agencies in your jurisdiction? Does your organizational structure result in land development plan approval silos? For example, do the stormwater management plan reviewers interact with the site plan reviewers? Some of you are fortunate enough to work in smaller jurisdictions where one agency might do all of these reviews and therefore coordination is somewhat automatic. But for those of you who work in larger jurisdictions, many of these review functions are split into separate agencies. In order to address issues such as hazard creep and dam ownership, we need a team approach to approving these plans. Some locations address this by holding interagency meetings with development advisory committees. These allow for coordination and interaction amongst the plan review agencies. Even us here at MDE have coordination issues sometimes between our permit agencies. Despite our best efforts, conflicts between the approved small pond plan and the site plan or subdivision plat occur. The impacts can be in the form of hazard creep, ownership issues, and access. It is important that we recognize the pond plans that we are reviewing are usually part of a larger development project. Let's look at some examples. Let's start with hazard creep and how development occurring downstream or upstream of a small pond or dam can immediately impact the hazard class of the structure. This is a picture of a typical stormwater management dry pond taken in 2018. Note the location of the dam and control structure. This is a 15-foot high dam approved as a Maryland 378 pond. We've got the pond dam here and the control structure. Note the location of these homes, very nice homes, sitting on top of the dam. Here's an aerial view of that same pond and dam. Note the location of the dam, control structure, and spillway pipe. Again, we've got the dam, pond dam here. Here's the pond, and the dam is located here. Control structure and spillway pipe. There are 4 residential lots with very nice homes sitting on top of the dam, and even more located at the downstream toe of the dam, or right downstream of the toe of the dam. The dam spillway pipe runs through the left side of one of the residential lots. So we have a stormwater management pond approved for a residential subdivision where the public road is the pond dam. What came first, we might ask, the small pond or the single family lots? What did the planner see? What did the small pond reviewer see? One thing we do know is that they must not have coordinated their reviews. This is a snapshot of the recorded subdivision plat for this development. Again, note the location of the pond and the dam and the lots recorded on top of the dam. We've got the pond here in blue, the dam roughly outlined here in yellow, spillway pipe again in purple, and then these 4 residential lots shown here with their property boundaries in red. Once this subdivision plat was recorded, the pond, originally approved as a low hazard small pond structure, immediately experienced hazard creep when these 4 half-acre residential lots were recorded on the dam. Imagine being the owner of one of these properties and the local jurisdiction notifies you that you now own part of a dam. I know this doesn't happen everywhere and that many organizations are structured to prevent this type of thing from occurring. But as plan reviewers, we need to be aware of the other land development plans that are being processed that will impact the pond we are approving. The good news is there is a good ending to this story, as a local jurisdiction is currently constructing a modification to this dam and outlet works to reduce its hazard. But I can say this is not without significant cost and extensive outreach to the existing property owners affected. Let's look at maintenance access and how property boundaries can impact the ability for the dam owner to maintain the structure. Here's an example where maintenance access is a problem because portions of the dam in the 15-foot no woody vegetation zone are located off the property. This is a schematic of an existing small pond submitted for approval for an MS4 retrofit credit. Note the location of the dam, the emergency spillway, and the property line. So the dam is roughly here. The outfall for this pond is here. Water's flowing in this direction. Note the property line here in red. And then we have the emergency spillway. And the approximate location of the 15-foot no woody vegetation zone here is this black dotted line. Ownership and maintenance access became an immediate issue once this pond was constructed with portions of the dam, emergency spillway, and no woody vegetation free zone on an adjacent property. As John Roche and Stu Comstock mentioned in previous sessions, ensuring the existing pond is in good working condition is absolutely critical to receiving an approval for a small pond retrofit project. This is another example of off-site property impacts that limit maintenance access. This photo shows a small dry pond weir control structure that was constructed directly upstream of existing homes. So we've got the pond weir control structure. The pond's over here and sort of off the picture. Water is flowing in this direction. We've got the outfall here, and the flow kind of takes a right turn down this driveway. Note the location of these existing homes. This aerial photo shows the same small dry pond. Note the proximity of the dam and outfall structure to the adjacent properties. Again, we've got, here's the pond shown in blue. You can see these existing homes, that driveway I was talking about. These yellow lines here represent the limits of the dam. The dam or pond weir control structure is located here. Water flows in this direction and again, kind of takes a turn down the driveway. Here's a schematic of the approved plan for this same small pond. So here we've got, again, the pond roughly here. The dam is right here. The weir, concrete weir, weir and alcohol flows in this direction and down the driveway. Note the property lines shown in red. Focus on the location of the adjacent property boundary in red and its proximity to the dam and small pond outfall. As you can see, the dam has been constructed on 2 different properties. It is also located very close to a 3rd property. It is not clear how the pond dam owner will get access to property 1 and property 3 to maintain the dam in the no woody vegetation area. Let's talk about other offsite property impacts. How can we ensure offsite property is not negatively impacted by the pond we are approving? We need to understand our responsibilities as dam approvers, as plan approvers regarding offsite water flowage impacts. Maryland regulations say that if a stormwater management plan involves direction of some or all runoff off of the site, it is the responsibility of the developer to obtain from adjacent property owners any easements or other necessary property impacts concerning flowage of water. So this applies to both upstream and downstream impacts. Upstream impacts can include increased ponding limits upstream, downstream discharge rate increases, velocity increases, increases in flooding extent downstream, and changes to the point of discharge location. So how do you as a plan approver ensure downstream and upstream property owners have authorized these impacts? Does your jurisdiction have local policies such as downstream drainage easement requirements? Here's an example of a project that would have resulted in upstream ponding impacts. This slide shows a clip of a stormwater management plan for a proposed small pond. There's a lot going on in this image, but what I'd like you to focus on is the private property line in green and the proposed 100-year water surface elevation shown in red. So we've got a property line here that's existing. There are 2 residential lots, one here and one here. And we've got this proposed DMP here, which is essentially a small pond, with a proposed 100-year water surface elevation ponding limit shown in this dotted red line. So as you can see, the developer was trying very hard to squeeze this small stormwater management structure into an existing area between 2 roads and 2 residential lots. We see this typically or especially in urban areas or areas of redevelopment in particular. Here's an example of downstream flow rate impacts. So far, our examples have discussed post-construction conditions, but don't forget, we need to consider these downstream impacts during the sediment control plan review as well. In our last session, Amanda Malcolm discussed the importance of considering interim conditions during different phases of construction. These interim conditions can result in unintended downstream property impacts. This example illustrates this. This is an aerial view of a construction site with a sediment basin. On the right, you can see the property under construction and the location of the sediment basin. So we've got this property here under construction. Sediment basin is located approximately in this area in the red circle. The basin discharges about right here. The discharge rate concentrates along the property line in a swale and then takes a turn and kind of flows this way across this residential lot, a farm field, and then to a floodplain. Unfortunately, there is no requirement in state regulations to ensure existing flow rate conditions are maintained when designing a sediment basin. The result for this case is that the downstream property owner is experiencing increases in flow rate and sediment discharge across their property. These photos show what happens when a summer thunderstorm larger than a 24-hour duration 2-year design storm occurs, and the stormwater discharge flows from the sediment basin. Okay, so on this photo on the right, we've got the property line for that property under construction is about right here. The sediment basin is up here. It's a little bit off to the picture, up on the top of this hill. Water flows out of the sediment basin down the hill along the property line, where it concentrates at this point and overtops the silt fence. So this is showing the water during a summer thunderstorm overtopping the silt fence, flowing across the residential property down slope. Here it's flowing across the backyard, and it's picked up here behind the house, flows along the side of the yard, down the driveway, and then across the road. So there were a couple of problems with this design. First, the design storm for the basin could not handle this intense, short duration thunderstorm. Second, while the discharge location did not change from pre-development conditions, the rate of discharge and the quality of the discharge did. So how do we address these short duration, high intensity storms during construction? Do we need to reconsider the design storm and discharge rate requirements for sediment basins? Another issue that keeps cropping up with small ponds and dams are these existing farm ponds. These tend to bring with them ownership, hazard creep, and maintenance issues. What is the definition of farm pond? Maryland non-tidal wetlands regulations include this definition. Farm pond means a predominantly open water body used primarily to support agricultural activities, including livestock watering, irrigation, sediment control, fire protection, or aquaculture. Predominantly open water bodies on areas with a land use other than agriculture or that are not used primarily for agricultural activities are not considered farm ponds. So it may look like a farm pond, or it may once was a farm pond, but is it still a farm pond? What happens when one of these farm ponds is no longer part of an agricultural use property, such as was the case in the situation shown here? The photo on the left is an aerial view of an existing agricultural property taken in 1993. Note the location of the two farm ponds in the dam to the lower pond shown in yellow. So we've got two farm ponds. Water is flowing in this direction. And this is the location of the lower pond dam, shown here in yellow. The photo on the right shows the recorded subdivision with these existing ponds now located on HOA-owned open space. Again, the two ponds, that dam that I pointed out in yellow. Water's flowing in this direction. Many of these farm ponds either become private recreational ponds or are incorporated into a new subdivision or land development plan. Often there's a large farm parcel that is planned for a residential subdivision. Stormwater management is proposed in ESD practices and maybe with some additional small quantity management structures. The developer plans to keep the existing farm pond as a recreational amenity for the subdivision. But who is evaluating the condition of these existing ponds and dams? What we are finding is that sometimes the stormwater management plan reviewer doesn't look at the existing farm pond because it's not proposed for stormwater management. And the small pond reviewer doesn't review the existing farm pond because it's existing and not proposed to be altered. The farm pond remains as is, most likely in poor condition, and is proposed to be located on an HOA parcel, perhaps part of the required open space for the subdivision, or it ends up as a recreational feature on a private lot. And once this happens, the pond is no longer considered a farm pond. As reviewers, we need to look at the whole system. This is where coordination and communication across plan review agencies is critical. As a reviewer, take into account the existing and proposed drainage system, including all existing ponds on the parcel. Make sure any existing ponds either meet current criteria, are brought up to date, or are breached. These photos show the condition of that lower pond and dam today. The earthen embankment is believed to be about 70 years old. The property is currently owned by the developer and will be turned over to the HOA. The photo on the left shows the pond, the location of the existing clogged control structure, and the location of the dam overtopping. We've got the pond here. This is the dam. All these trees on the embankment. The riser structure is here. It's completely clogged. And we've got an area here that is currently overtopping. Note the pumping going on here to lower the water level, to reduce the overtopping incidence. The photo on the right shows significant erosion and slope failure on the downslope side of the dam. We've got this right here, slope failure. And then this photo here shows the existing corrosion of the dam's spillway pipe. MDE was recently notified of the situation, and after inspection, MDE has determined that the dam is in an unsafe condition and requires immediate action. So were these ponds and dams evaluated during the subdivision or stormwater management review process? Again, when a pond is found on a property under review for a subdivision, as the local approval authority, you have an obligation to notify MDE, require an inspection of the dam and condition assessment, potentially require a dam safety permit or a small pond approval if the pond is in poor condition or needs repair. This should occur prior to any subdivision approval or any development activity. The ownership of these structures will ultimately become either a private homeowner or an HOA. Our experience in these cases is that the new owner or HOA do not realize they now own a pond and do not have the financial ability to do the necessary repairs and maintenance. So do your due diligence and let MDE know about these existing ponds. Don't let private residential homeowners or HOAs inherit a problem like this. Let me show you one more example and then I'll be done. These are pictures of existing ponds in a use through watershed. I think it is safe to say that based on these pictures that these structures are ponds. In fact, the pond at the bottom left is actually a low hazard dam on MDE's dam inventory. This is a recent aerial photo of that same area. Note the location of the 4 ponds that I just previously showed you. This is pond, what we call pond number 3, pond number 4, pond number 2, and our low hazard dam. This large parcel was recently approved as a large lot residential subdivision. And when the subdivision was approved, it appears that these ponds were overlooked. The result is that multiple single family residential lots were created that bisected the ponds and the dams. So this is an overlay of the record plat showing the new lot lines in black. And I've highlighted some of these lots in red to kind of illustrate how some of the ponds and dams are bisected by these lot lines. There we go. So the property owners of the new lots had no idea they were now dam owners. In addition, forest conservation easements were recorded over these existing dams. So now we have 3 small ponds and 1 dam that have multiple owners. Access for maintenance will be clearly an issue. We have 3 small ponds and 1 dam recorded forest conservation easements that conflict with the requirement to maintain a woody vegetation-free area over and around the dam. And we have 3 small ponds and a dam that do not have a maintenance agreement, or in the case of the dam, a recorded memorandum of land restriction. So how can this be prevented? Again, we need to broaden our review. Know what plans have been submitted on our project, and if you see something, say something. All of these issues point to the importance of working as a team and to bring into our team the other agencies that deal with the land development plan approval process. Again, teamwork, communication, and coordination are the keys to our success. We have to be on the same page and we have to be reviewing the same information. because we are ultimately responsible for maintenance and ensuring the resiliency of these structures. So that's the end of the opening remarks for today's session. Moderators, do we have any time for questions or comments before we move on to a short break?
Yes, we do. We have a couple minutes for questions.
And Jennifer, at this moment,